Court records show that a former county sheriff was sentenced this week to the statutory maximum term of imprisonment after being convicted on multiple counts of corruption, abuse of office, obstruction of justice, and contempt of court, concluding a high-profile case that drew national attention because of the defendant's conduct during trial proceedings, including remarks and behavior directed at Judge Frank Caprio while appearing in court. According to filings from the Superior Court, the defendant served as an elected sheriff for more than a decade in a mid-sized U.S. county, overseeing law enforcement operations, detention facilities, and budgetary allocations. Later, investigators with the State Attorney General's office began examining the sheriff's administration after receiving complaints from deputies, county employees, and members of the public alleging misuse of public funds, selective enforcement of the law, and retaliatory actions against whistleblowers. A grand jury later returned an indictment charging the sheriff with multiple felonies, including bribery, falsification of official records, wire fraud, and conspiracy. Prosecutors stated that evidence presented at trial demonstrated a pattern of conduct in which the sheriff allegedly accepted cash payments and other benefits from private contractors in exchange for steering county contracts and providing preferential treatment and staying. Financial records admitted into evidence showed undisclosed bank accounts and transactions that prosecutors said were inconsistent with the sheriff's reported income. Witnesses testified that certain enforcement actions were delayed or dropped following private meetings between the sheriff and politically connected individuals, while others faced increased scrutiny after publicly criticizing the sheriff's office. The case was assigned to Judge Frank Caprio following standard judicial rotation procedures. Court transcripts indicate that pretrial hearings were marked by repeated disputes between defense counsel and prosecutors over discovery issues, scheduling, and evidentiary motions. During several appearances, the sheriff personally addressed the court despite being advised to speak through counsel, prompting warnings from the bench regarding courtroom decorum. During the trial, which lasted several weeks, prosecutors called more than 40 witnesses, including former deputies, county accountants, forensic auditors, and federal agents who assisted in tracing financial transactions. The defense challenged the credibility of these witnesses, arguing that the investigation was politically motivated and that the sheriff's actions fell within discretionary authority granted by law. Defense attorneys also contended that certain financial transfers were loans or gifts unrelated to official duties. Court observers noted that tension escalated during the second week of testimony when the sheriff, while seated at counsel table, was recorded on the courtroom microphone making comments questioning the impartiality of the proceedings. According to the official transcript, the sheriff referred to the court as a spectacle and suggested that the judge was playing to an audience, remarks that Judge Caprio addressed on the record. The judge reminded the defendant that such statements were inappropriate and warned that continued disruptions could result in sanctions. Despite repeated admonitions, further incidents were documented. On one occasion, the sheriff laughed audibly during the testimony of a former deputy describing alleged retaliation. On another, the defendant interrupted closing arguments, prompting the judge to order a brief recess and issue a formal warning. Legal analysts later noted that while such conduct does not directly affect the determination of guilt, it can influence the court's assessment of remorse and respect for the rule of law at sentencing. After deliberating for 3 days, the jury returned guilty verdicts on all major counts. In a post-verdict hearing, Judge Caprio denied defense motions for acquittal and a new trial, citing the weight of the evidence in the jury's role as fact-finder. The court then scheduled sentencing in order to present its investigation report. The presentence report, submitted by the probation department, detailed the financial losses attributed to the offenses, estimating that the county incurred millions of dollars in inflated contracts, legal costs, and administrative expenses. The report also referenced victim impact statements from county employees who described a workplace environment characterized by fear and retaliation. Prosecutors filed a sentencing memorandum requesting the maximum penalty allowed under statute, arguing that the defendant's position of trust and lack of remorse warranted the harshest sentence. In their own memorandum, defense attorneys requested leniency, emphasizing the sheriff's years of public service, lack of prior criminal history, and family circumstances. They argued that a lengthy sentence would be disproportionate and that alternative sanctions could satisfy the goals of punishment and deterrence. At the sentencing hearing, Judge Caprio summarized the findings of the court, noting that public officials are held to a higher standard because of the authority entrusted to them. The judge referenced trial evidence demonstrating what the court described as a sustained scheme to misuse public office for personal gain, addressing the defendant directly. Judge Caprio stated that accountability and equal application of the law were fundamental principles of the justice system. The court record shows that during the sentencing hearing, the sheriff again made unsolicited remarks, questioning the fairness of the process and suggesting that the outcome had been predetermined. Judge Caprio responded by stating that the defendant had been afforded full due process, including representation by counsel, the right to present evidence, and a jury trial. The judge added that the defendant's statements further underscored concerns raised in the pre-sentence report regarding acceptance of responsibility. After considering the statutory factors, including the seriousness of the offenses, the need for deterrence, and the impact on public trust, Judge Caprio imposed the maximum sentence permitted by law. The sentence included a lengthy term of incarceration, substantial fines, restitution to the county, and a lifetime ban from holding public office. The judge also ordered the forfeiture of assets determined to be proceeds of illegal activity. In explaining the sentence, the court emphasized that corruption within law enforcement undermines confidence in the justice system and harms communities. Judge Caprio stated on the record that the sentence was not based on the defendant's courtroom behavior alone, but on the totality of the evidence and the scope of the misconduct. The judge noted, however, that the defendant's conduct during proceedings reflected a lack of respect for the court and the law, which the court considered in evaluating prospects for rehabilitation. Following the sentencing, representatives from the Attorney General's office issued a statement affirming their commitment to prosecuting public corruption cases. The statement highlighted the role of cooperating witnesses and interagency collaboration in uncovering complex financial schemes. County officials announced plans to review procurement and oversight procedures to prevent similar abuses in the future. Defense counsel filed a notice of appeal indicating plans to challenge the convictions and sentence on several grounds, including alleged evidentiary errors and claims of judicial bias. Legal experts noted that appellate courts generally give deference to jury verdicts and sentencing decisions within statutory limits, though they will review the record for procedural fairness. The case has prompted renewed discussion among policymakers and law enforcement organizations about ethics training, transparency, and mechanisms for reporting misconduct. Advocacy groups cited the verdict as an example of accountability, while emphasizing the importance of protecting whistleblowers. Scholars observed that high-profile prosecutions can serve as deterrence, but must be accompanied by systemic reforms to address underlying vulnerabilities. As the former sheriff begins serving the sentence, administrative control of the sheriff's office has been transferred to an interim appointee, pending a special election. State officials confirmed that audits of past contracts and internal practices are ongoing. Court documents indicate that additional civil litigation may follow as the county seeks to recover losses attributed to the corruption scheme. The proceedings concluded with Judge Caprio ordering the clerk to enter judgment in accordance with the sentence and advising the defendant of appellate right. The courtroom was adjourned without further incident, bringing to a close a case that underscored the legal consequences faced by public officials convicted of abusing their authority and the judiciary's role in imposing penalties consistent with the law.